The Philadelphia Eagles improved to 4-0 with an overtime victory over the Washington Commanders, one of two remaining teams in the NFL that are undefeated at the quarter season mark. Welcome into the EPA Podcast. I am your host, Shane Haff. I'm here to break down the Eagles versus Commanders game from last Sunday. And then at the end of the podcast, we're going to turn the page and talk about the Eagles' pending matchup with the Los Angeles Rams. Last year, Washington came into Philadelphia and they handed the Eagles their first loss of the year. And to be honest, as I watched the first half and as I watched the first quarter, even the first half of this game, it felt a lot like that. There were long scoring drives, Washington hammering out long drives after long drive after long drive. It's something they did to the Eagles last year, keeping the offense off the field, and they built a 10-point lead. Now, fortunately for the Eagles, Devontae Smith makes an incredible catch before halftime to pick up a chunk gain, and the Eagles cut it to a field goal at halftime. They get the ball back after half, and they sort of took over the game offensively in the second half. However, as they took control of the game offensively, the defense fell apart and allows 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, including Sam Howell going down the field with 1:53 left and only 1 timeout to get the game into overtime. Fortunately for the Eagles, Ron Rivera made the suboptimal decision to kick the extra point and take it to overtime rather than going for 2 in the win. And in overtime, the Eagles defense was able to get a 3-and-out and then put away the game. And so I've dug into the All-22 film, anxious to get into that and talk about it. So let's talk about the Washington offense versus the Philadelphia defense first. And up front, I think you have to give credit to Eric Bieniemy for the game plan that he put together and to Sam Howell for executing really well in this game. We're going to talk about the Eagles' deficiencies on defense, but up top, we need to tip our cap to the Commanders and say that Sam Howell played a really good game. He finishes 29 of 41 for 290 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 40 yards. He directed that aforementioned game-tying drive in the final minute and 43 seconds of the game. And for the Eagles, they give up 365 yards, 26 first downs. This was their second worst EPA per drive performance in the last 2 years, following only the Super Bowl last season. There's a lot of things causing that. Let's start with Tremaine Edmunds. I think Tremaine Edmunds is a complete and total liability in coverage. Excuse me, it's not Tremaine Edmunds. It's Terrell Edmunds. I always get those mixed up. It's really unfortunate they both start with a T. Terrell Edmunds is a complete and total liability in coverage. There's one particular play that I'm thinking of that the Commanders motion to 4 strong. So you've got 4 receivers on one side of the formation, and Edmunds is on the other side, along with Darius Slay. And he plays a half-field zone over Darius Slay covering this one guy. And that's not typically how you want to coach that. When you've got 4 guys on one side of the field, your offside safety needs to be keying over to that, looking for crossers, looking for action rather than just standing passively in half of the field over the top of your best cornerback. There's other situations where I thought he was just far too passive. He would be 15 to 20 yards off the line of scrimmage, and he's retreating. He's not standing his ground, reading these out. I just think Edmunds is a total liability out there. And I do think that getting Justin Evans back is going to make a big difference for this team. Now, obviously, Justin Evans played really poorly in week 1, but I do think he started to come into his own. And Edmunds has just been, he's been really bad. And so the Eagles need to get the back end of their defensive backfield really shored up. Reed Blankenship has done a really good job. There's just not been another safety opposite him that's been healthy and been able to be consistent. Reed Blankenship, I thought, had a really good game again. One of his best plays is the post route that he broke up. And, you could argue there's some pass interference there, but he's running with a crosser. Like, he's a middle of field safety on this play, and Washington is trying to bait him with a crossing route and then throw a post over the top. And he starts to go with the crossing route, sees the post route going deeper, and he completely flips his hips. So he's running towards the one sideline. He's got a post route coming from that sideline to the middle of the field, and he's able to flip his hips and get back and recover and help on that. And he almost comes up with an interception. Ball went off of his face mask. And so that's really good. That's a clutch play. In overtime, On that third down, he's matched up with Terry McLaurin out of the slot, and that's a tough thing for any safety to handle. And, he gets beat outside, but he's able to make up that ground, and he's able to force him out of bounds so he doesn't get the second foot down, sacrificing his forearm to win that game. And so one half of the safety duo does pretty well. The other half of the safety duo really needs some help, and that's something that I hope that is able to be shored up with some combination of Justin Evans and Sidney Brown upon return. The other thing is, the cornerback room. You've got Darius Slay. It's a rough game for Darius Slay. Darius Slay was beat routinely, especially out of bunches. It's something that the Eagles have really struggled with. They're struggling to pass off those bunches. And typically the thing you can do against bunches, there's two things. You can box it, which is where you have a first outside shallow defender, which is usually a cornerback, a first outside deep defender that's usually the outside cornerback. In this case, it'd be Darius Slay. The first inside deep is the safety, and the first inside shallow is usually a linebacker. And so you just basically drawing a box on the field, and the four guys are passing off these three routes according to which point of the box they go to. The other option is to get physical and jam the point man, the guy that's on the line, and then your corner and a linebacker take a first out, first in approach. But the problem with that, and this is something Washington did, is what if both guys go in or both guys go out, and it can really mess with those rules. And the Eagles have really struggled to pass those off. There were a few times in this game that Darius Slay was really slow to react. I broke one of them down in a video that I did about the Eagles running a double A gap that we'll talk about for a second, where it's possible Slay can't see the inside receiver starting to break out because there's a bunch of congestion there, but he's just slow to react, and it's an easy pitch and catch. So that's something the Eagles have to shore up. I also think it would be beneficial for the Eagles to get Josh Jobe off of the field, not because Josh Jobe's been bad. I said this on Twitter and people really got fired up about it. I'm not saying Josh Jobe has been bad, but he's been average to below average. He's struggled a little bit. And that doesn't mean I think he's a bad player or that he won't be a starter in the future. But when you have him on the field and you move James Bradberry into the slot, something I advocated for, it's having a negative impact on the defense. I think the Eagles need Bradberry back outside. He's better outside than he is in the slot. And that's the part that's really the big deal. And so they sign Bradley Roby. He's probably not going to be active for another week or two, but he's a veteran cornerback that's got inside-outside versatility. It gives them another piece there, but I think the ultimate goal for them is to get James Bradberry back outside, whether that means Roby takes over the slot, Sidney Brown comes back and takes over the slot. He played 12 snaps in the slot in the first half of the Bucs game before he got injured. I think they're going to experiment with some things, a way to get Bradberry back outside, and I do think that will help them out. We're talking about the defensive line. People criticized the defensive line a little bit in this game. And in the first half, the defensive line wasn't getting a lot of pressure, but they were relentless in the second half. Fletcher Cox big boyed Sam Cosmi so many times. And he didn't come up with a lot of sacks, but there's some great pass rush moves there by Fletcher Cox against one of the Commanders' two best offensive linemen in this one. On the defensive front, the Eagles had 4 pass rushers with 6 or more pressures in this game. Josh Sweat had 9. Hassan Reddick had 7. Brandon Graham had 6. Carter had 6. And then Fletcher Cox also had 4. And so Jalen Carter has at least 4 pressures in every game so far. And per Next Gen Stats, he leads all defensive tackles in pressures at 21, pressure rate at 21.2%, and pass rush get off 0.78 seconds. And so Jalen Carter continues to be good. Now, you did notice in this game, Sam Howell was able to scramble. And I think a lot of it had to do with some of the games that the Eagles are running up front. They're running twists and stunts more frequently than they did last year, where they were just a static rushing team. And one of the things that you have to really focus on when you do that is to make sure you maintain gap integrity. And far too many times in this game, the Eagles didn't maintain their rush lane integrity, and it gave Sam Howell an easy escape, either up the middle, around a side. And that's something that I think the Eagles really need to focus on cleaning up. It's not going to hurt you against a guy like Matthew Stafford, probably, especially with a bruised hip that we'll get to in a minute. But it is something that they're going to have to clean up to keep quarterbacks in the pocket and allow the pass rush to get home. Then one final thing that I thought was interesting on the defensive front is the Eagles running this double A gap look. This is something the Vikings ran a lot. I've broken it down in all 22 videos. You can go check it out there. But it's essentially where you have 4 defensive linemen lined up over the guard and tackles. And then you have 2 linebackers lined up in the A gaps, which is the gap between the center and the guard on either side. You can do a lot of things out of that. You can send them both. And you have to account for all 6 guys in your protection. So usually that means keeping a back end to block, or it means that you're hot. You've got to have a hot in case all 6 guys come. You can also bail both guys out of it. You can see which direction the center slides, and that guy drops out and the other guy rushes. So you make the center wrong, and you basically make him not guard anybody. There's a lot of things you can do out of it. The Eagles ran it 3 times. It was a new look I hadn't seen a lot. They bailed out of it twice. And then the one time they brought it, Nicholas Morrow got a sack. And so I really like that look, as long as you can be solid against the run, because that can be run on, as the Eagles did to the Vikings. If you can be solid against the run, I really like those sort of looks for the defense. Okay, let's flip the script here. And now let's talk about the Eagles offense against the Commanders defense. The Eagles used 11 personnel in this game on 91% of their snaps. 11 personnel meaning 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 receivers. And that 91% was the highest rate in the Nick Sirianni era. Now, the Commanders like to play a lot of light personnel. I talked about last week on the preview, I could see the Eagles going heavy personnel to force them into base. That's not something the Eagles did. In fact, they went 11 personnel and they spread the field. They got into empty a lot, and it worked really well. Now, what didn't work well was the running game. Part of that is Cam Jurgens going out with an injury. I thought the run game really struggled after that. Part of it is Washington has a really good defensive front, and the Eagles are at their best running out of 12 personnel, and they didn't go in 12 personnel this game. But A.J. Brown did get going. He had 175 yards and 2 touchdowns on 9 catches. A beast of a game for him, and the Eagles really focused on getting him involved early, and it paid off in dividends. Now, I've seen a lot of stuff about Jalen Hurts so far this year. Jalen Hurts is struggling. Jalen Hurts doesn't look the same. And in some elements, if you look at EPA and things like that, it's true. But you have to take into account the blitzes they've been facing. Blitzed at a super high rate through the first 3 weeks. They finally played a team that wasn't blitz happy. And I thought Hurts played a really good game. Now, there's still some elements of him bailing from the pocket when he shouldn't do it. And to be honest, I think that's just what's going to happen with Hurts. Now, last year you had the positive of maybe he's going to break a big run when he does that. And this year he's been really hesitant to run. And so you're just getting the bad end of that, not the good end of that. And so I think that's why people are talking about it. I really don't think he's leaving the pocket more than he was last year. But in my opinion, this was his best game of the year. And it was on par with his top performances last year, excluding the Super Bowl. He made some incredible throws in this game. You have the hole shot that he took at the top of the field against cover 2 to A.J. Brown. You got to wait till the defensive back is cleared by the receiver on the outside, and then you've got to rifle that ball in there on the sideline before the safety can close. And he hit that throw perfectly. The pass he threw to Dallas Goedert on the crosser over the middle of the field, you literally cannot throw a pass better than that. And then you have the key third down to Olamide Zaccheaus, where he throws, he's got a linebacker to his right. He's got a safety closing from the left, and he fits it into about the smallest window you can, and he throws it low. He takes Zaccheaus to the ground. If you get that ball up high or even chest height, you're going to get popped by the safety, but he throws it low and brings him to the ground, so he avoids contact. And I thought Hurts was throwing darts in this game. At the end of the game, when the Commanders are playing, so heavy blitz, getting in the box, trying to stop the Eagles, and he checks. This was a check. He checked into a double move from A.J. Brown, and he was patient, and he hit that for the go-ahead touchdown. I thought Jalen Hurts was fantastic. Now, there's some things you can work on. He almost threw an interception that A.J. Brown broke up. He should have never thrown. It was a 3rd and 17. He rolls out to the left, and he just chucks it up into double coverage, way underthrown. I don't like that. It's 3rd down, so it mitigates it a little bit, but that's not the play that you're looking for there. He had the deep ball to DeAndre Swift, where the Eagles went empty with the running back out at the boundary to get a linebacker on him in man coverage. They did this last week with Kenny Gainwell, and it was underthrown because of pressure. This week, there's pressure, and Hurts has to climb in the pocket. He doesn't get his feet reset right, and he ends up overthrowing DeAndre Swift on what would have been a touchdown. Now, there was a hold before the pass, so the Eagles still did get yardage on the play. I've seen people say, excuse the throw because of the hold, but DeAndre Swift was free of the hold and running at full speed when Hurts let go of the football. So that didn't impact it. It was just a bad throw. And something I've noticed, and people, I pointed this out. People told me JT O'Sullivan on QB School also pointed this out, but Hurts' footwork, when he is facing pressure, when he's not operating from the pocket, his footwork gets a little messed up. And I tweeted out a clip of this. You can go look at it. But I tweeted out side by side 2 of his good throws and then these 2 bad throws. And on both of the bad throws, the common thread is there's pressure, he's moved off his spot, and he doesn't get his feet set. On the A.J. Brown one, he's perpendicular to the sideline. He's parallel to the receiver when he throws, and he can't get power behind it. On the DeAndre Swift one, he has to climb the pocket, and he climbs the pocket like you want him to. But instead of setting his cleats and driving the throw, he sort of bounces into a second hop and it just sails. And so that's something that Hurts needs to work on. Now, this isn't really a new thing for Jalen Hurts. Last year, when he was kept clean, when he was not under pressure, he was 3rd in the NFL in points above average per play, behind only Patrick Mahomes and Tua. So he was among the best of the best last year when it came to operating from a clean platform, clean pocket. But when you add in pressure, he dropped down to 18th. When he's out of the pocket, he dropped down to 16th. This has been this isn't a new problem for Hurts. It's not a reason to panic. It's just another thing he can work on, getting those feet right when he is moved off of his platform. But overall, I thought the offense did really good. I thought the passing game was really good. There's going to be games where you struggle to run the football. You're not going to bulldoze every team in the NFL. And the Eagles were unable to bulldoze a very talented Washington defensive front. And so, you'll see what you're able to do next week. But it's nice to know that you can rely on your passing game to play at an elite level. And that's what the Eagles are going to do. They're going to make you pick your spots. Do you want to really focus on stopping the run game? We will take A.J. Brown on Emmanuel Forbes all day. Do you want to help over the top? Now we can run the football. It's what we've seen the Eagles do for a year and a half. It's what we're going to continue to see them do. So before we throw to the break here, I just want to give one final stat, and that is this one. Jalen Hurts has won each of his last 5 regular season starts in which his team is trailed by 10 or more points. So 5 straight regular season games that he has trailed by double digits, they've come back and won. And that's just such a testament to this team and how unflappable they are. It doesn't snowball. You can find yourself down 10 in the second quarter at home against a team you should be beating pretty easily, and there's not going to be panic. It's the line from Remember the Titans. Attitude reflects leadership, right? Jalen Hurts is unflappable. He doesn't get down. He doesn't get too up. He's just going to be steady. And that's one of the things I appreciate most about this team, because a lot of teams in the NFL cannot say that. So that's going to wrap it up here for the Eagles-Commanders review. We're going to throw it to a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll preview the upcoming matchup with the Los Angeles Rams. We are back here on the EPA podcast, ready to break down this upcoming matchup with the Los Angeles Rams. If you're watching here on YouTube, there's a schematic graphic up on the screen showing tendencies and success rate for the Rams. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, this will also be, or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, this will also be up on my Twitter feed, so you can go check that out as well. But let's dive into it. Let's start off with the Rams offense. One of the biggest tendencies the Rams have is their usage of 11 personnel. I just said the Eagles used 11 personnel on 91% of their snaps last week. The Rams have used it on 92% of their snaps for the entire season. And so they are going to be 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers, nearly every play. And out of 11 personnel, they motion on 65% of their plays, which is the 4th highest rate in the league. Now, they don't motion as often to change the passing strength, which is something that has given the Eagles problems. When you have 3 receiving options on one side, you motion a guy across, so now it's 3 on the other side. It forces your nickel corner to switch sides. The Eagles have had trouble pushing those coverages. This isn't so much what the Rams do. The Rams more motion from a traditional lineup into bunches, which is three receivers, think of like a triangle. The point of the triangle is the guy in the line of scrimmage. The Eagles have struggled with that. Or they motion into stacks, which is basically the same thing, but with only two wide receivers involved. The Eagles struggle with bunches and stacks, and the Rams major in running bunches and stacks. And so you're going to see this a lot. It's going to be something that the Eagles are going to have to deal with, and hopefully they have a better plan than they have had so far this season. It should be a point of emphasis this week, and hopefully it helps the Eagles clean up what has been an underlying issue on the season. The story of the NFL in terms of rookies is wide receiver Puka Nacua, a third-round draft pick, a day 3 draft pick. So far, he has 52 targets, 39 receptions for 501 yards and a touchdown. He aligns a lot as the point man in those bunches and stacks, the guy that's up on the line of scrimmage. And he has been Stafford's favorite target by far. He's been targeted on 32.5% of Stafford's passes. Now, Cooper Kupp, he has been designated to return from IR, which means he is in his 21-day practice window. It's uncertain if he's going to play on Sunday. We don't know. If he plays, it'll be interesting to see how they use him along with Nacua. So that's something to keep an eye on, but I don't really have any more information on that. We'll have to see the injury report when it comes out later today and tomorrow. Matthew Stafford is expected to play, but he sustained a hip injury last week. That it looked like it bothered him a lot in the game. He wasn't moving very well, and he has been limited in practice. So we'll see what kind of not that he's a mobile quarterback, but what kind of mobility, what kind of movement skills he has in the pocket in this game. And so you talk about these bunches and stacks. I think one of the things the Eagles really need to do is get physical with Puka Nacua off the line of scrimmage. Now, that can create some other problems with Tutu Atwell getting that free release. But Nacua and Stafford, they've got really good chemistry, and a lot of it's based on these timing routes. Stafford's hitting his drop. The offensive line's not great. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so Stafford is ripping these throws into tight windows, these 10, 12-yard curl, in-breaking routes. That's kind of Nakua's specialty. And Stafford just trusts him. He trusts he's going to get there. He's throwing the ball before the breaks. Nacua does a really good job of breaking those routes off and getting his eyes on Stafford. You need to disrupt that timing, disrupt that rhythm. And one of the ways you can do that is getting physical at the line of scrimmage. And so I would like to see James Bradbury getting physical with Puka Nacua off the line of scrimmage and really trying to disrupt that timing, make Stafford hold that ball an extra half a second to allow this pass rush to get home. And I think this pass rush can get home. The interior of the Rams offensive line at left tackle, it's questionable if their starting left tackle is going to play. But then you look at the interior offensive line. You've got Steve Avila at left guard, who's a rookie second-round pick out of TCU. You've got Coleman Shelton at center, who's in his second year as a starter. He's nothing special. He's just kind of a guy. And you've got Joe Noteboom as the right guard. They're vulnerable to the Eagles' defensive fronts. And now Fletcher Cox, it's unclear if Cox is going to play in this game. He sustained an injury last week, and so losing Cox would hurt. But the Eagles do have Jalen Carter, who's been so good. They've used Brandon Graham rushing at defensive tackle, especially last week. That's something you could see. Milton Williams. You should be able to get pressure up the middle. And if Stafford, if the hip's bothering him, he's not able to move, I think this is a game where you could see the Eagles pile up sacks. But it's going to require making Stafford hold that ball, getting a little more aggressive in coverage. Now on the Eagles offense against the Rams defense, the Rams run light boxes and two high shell defenses at the highest rate in the league. 74% light box, 78% two high shell. They want to eliminate explosive plays. And so I think this is a game you're going to see the Eagles have trouble pushing the ball downfield, hitting those big explosive plays. This is a game where you're going to need to run the ball. You're going to need to establish the run, either run them out of those fronts or make them just continue to give up 5-6 yard runs and stay ahead of the sticks. In terms of defensive personnel, they're split pretty equally between base 3-4, nickel 3-3-5, and nickel 2-4-5. So they will get in base personnel. They'll get in nickel personnel, but regardless, they're going to be in light boxes. The Eagles need to be able to take advantage of that. They only blitz on about 18% of dropbacks, which is a very low rate in the league. So not a lot of blitzing going to happen. but they do drop 8 into coverage at the third highest rate in the league on 11% of snaps. And that is something the Eagles struggled with against the Vikings. Now, granted, it was either dropping 8 or rushing 6 every other play, so it was hard to get used to. So we'll see if the Eagles are able to move the ball against those 3-man rushes as well. One guy to keep an eye on in this game for the Rams is cornerback Ahkello Witherspoon. He is a starter for the Rams at cornerback. Last year, he played for the Steelers, and A.J. Brown feasted on him. He caught 3 touchdowns in that game. 2 of them were over Witherspoon. And so the Eagles may try to go to that well. But again, the Steelers, they weren't dedicating the amount of resources to help over the top that the Rams are going to do. And then let's talk Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert has not had great statistical performances this year. He's had some concentration drops. Hurts has missed him on some times. Of course, they had that beautiful connection over the middle of the field last week. This is a game Dallas Goedert should be able to get going. I mean, who are the Rams linebackers? Actually, let's play a game called Name Rams Defensive Starters. You can pause this podcast for a second and think if you want to. Outside of Aaron Donald, who are the other starters for this team? Let me read you the names. You tell me how many of them you got right or how many of them you've even heard of. So on the defensive line, you've got Jonah Williams, Bobby Brown III, and of course, Aaron Donald. At linebacker, you have Ernest Jones, Christian Roseboom, and Michael Hoyt. And then at defensive backs, you have Darion Kendrick, Kobe Durant, Ahkello Witherspoon, Jordan Fuller, and Russ Yeast. The Eagles have a massive talent advantage in this game. Their offense is so much better than the Rams' defense. They have got to be able to move this ball in what could be a high-scoring game. I mean, we don't know what the Eagles' defensive backfield is going to look like. They're banged up. The Rams' offense very well could put up a lot of points. The Eagles need to be prepared to keep pace in a game like that, and they should be able to because they just have a massive talent advantage over this Rams defense. The one thing that could wreck that, and this is something we have to keep an eye on, is Cam Jurgens is expected to miss a couple of games. And so Sua Opeta is slated to be the starting right guard. Aaron Donald, he's the talented player on this defense. He's, one of the best defensive players in the history of the league. They're going to get Aaron Donald rushing on Sua Opeta. It's going to be their main focus. They're going to try to exploit Opeta stepping in and making this start in the place of Cam Jurgens. The Eagles have to have a plan for that. And it can't just be sliding Jason Kelce to help because they're really good at isolating Aaron Donald, giving those one-on-one rush looks. And so Sua Opeta is going to be a big part of this game. He has to be able to hold up with some help against Aaron Donald and not allow him to wreck this game. That's the only way the Rams defense should be able to contain the Eagles. That's the biggest thing to watch for there. Well, that is going to about wrap it up for this episode of the EPA Podcast. If you enjoyed my conversation about the Eagles Commanders game, go check out my film reviews on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube page. I have one up on the Eagles passing game. It's about 20 minutes. Some of the things I talked about, but you can see the visuals on the screen. I think you guys will enjoy that. Smash that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening this podcast so you get every show on the BGN radio feed. We'll have BGN Radio coming up. We'll have Eye on the Enemy, Babes on Broad. We'll be live right after the game for the BGN Instant Reaction Show. So you guys keep it tuned right here to the BGN Radio feed for every show. Go Birds.